All right, we're going to break down a recent speech by Donald Trump, but probably not in the way you're expecting. You see, according to one detailed analysis, this wasn't just another campaign speech. It was actually structured as a deliberate warning for the future.
So the speech kicks right off with this line. And the analysis we're digging into suggests this isn't just a complaint. It's not just a statement of fact. It's meant to be the emotional launchpad for a deep, simmering anger.
And where does that anger get channeled? Well, right into the first major theme of this analysis, this idea that America isn't just having a tough time. No, it's a nation in a full-blown crisis. It's a nation that has completely lost its way. And here's the phrase that unlocks the whole thing. The analysis points to this as a huge signal. See, by framing the situation as not normal, the argument is that you're creating the justification to take, well, abnormal actions. The kind of actions that get to bypass all the usual rules and procedures.
Think about it like this. On one side, you have this standard playbook, right? Democratic process, building consensus, diplomacy. But the moment you declare a crisis, you create what's called the exception. It's a state where you can just push all of that to the side. The normal rules just don't apply anymore. So, once you've established that there's this huge, fundamental problem, what's the next logical step in this kind of rhetoric? You've got to assign blame. You have to point the finger at who's responsible for this whole abnormal mess. And there you have it. According to the analysis, by specifically naming Democrats and Washington elites, you completely reframe what politics is. It's not a debate over ideas anymore. It becomes what the source calls a cleanup operation. The problem isn't the system. It's a specific group of people that just needs to be removed. Okay, so you've established this crisis mindset at home. The next step, according to the analysis, is to scale it up and apply that exact same logic to the entire world. What starts as a domestic diagnosis becomes a prescription for foreign policy. Now, this line right here, this is the moment where the source says that underlying theme of fear just explodes. It's such a simple, absolute statement. And what it does is it elevates one thing above everything else: control. Suddenly, things like international law or human rights, they all get demoted. And that leads to this core argument from the analysis. In this worldview, a nation's main purpose is to be a device for control. So it follows that anything that's uncontrolled, whether it's people, goods, or even ideas, isn't just a problem you manage, it's a threat you have to eliminate. And you can apply that same logic to economics. The analysis shows how this kind of line reframes the entire idea of global trade. It stops being a really complex system of cooperation and competition. It just becomes a simple story of exploitation, where America is the victim. And of course, that sets the stage for some pretty radical changes. The analysis we're following calls this single sentence one of the most historically dangerous in the whole speech. Why? Because it transforms national security from being about shared values and alliances into just a transaction. It's an invoice. And if you're an ally, the only question left to ask is, have we paid up? Now, let's shift gears from what was said to how it was said. The source makes this really fascinating point about how the whole tone of the speech changes, almost like the temperature in the room just drops when certain subjects come up. So when other rivals are discussed, the language can be pretty hot, very emotional. But this analysis points out that when the speech turns to China, all that heat just disappears. The tone gets dispassionate, precise, decisive. It's not a rant, it's a verdict. So here's the crucial point. The source argues that this short, simple phrase is actually, in its own way, scarier than war. And why would that be? Because it's not the language of somebody who's angry and wants a fight. It's the language of a final decision that has already been made. Case closed. So after you lay out this kind of cold resolve for the future, the very next move is to pivot to the past to justify it. You present your track record as if it's undeniable proof. The way the analysis interprets this is that it's not just a simple boast. It's a really powerful declaration that says, my method has been tested and it works. By framing it that way, anyone who opposes you is automatically painted as being irresponsible, even dangerous. So, all of this builds and builds to the final section of the analysis. And this part focuses on the speech's last big promise and what the source believes it really implies for the future. Not just for the country, but for the world. This is the big closing line. And on the surface, it sounds like a message of hope, of restoration. And for a lot of people, that is exactly what it is. But the analysis offers a really different take, one based on looking at history. It argues that throughout the years, the phrase, take our country back, has very rarely been a promise of unity. More often than not, it's been a promise of dispossession, a vow to take power or status or a sense of belonging from some other group.
And that leads us to the source's final conclusion, that this speech wasn't just a pitch for votes, it was framed as a warning. A warning that the way things are is going to be upended, that the rules we know are going to disappear, and that the void that's left behind will be filled by only one thing: power. So we're left with this central, really challenging question that this analysis poses. When you hear the words, "we will take our country back," what is actually being promised? Is it a message of restoration and hope for everybody? Or, as the source suggests, is it actually a warning of a massive shift, a promise of dispossession for some? That's the thought we'll leave you with.